Now we're going to size the form for the turkey. There's two ways you can do this. One way is to size the form on the bird when it's completely dried. It means the feathers are dried. That's what we call a dry fit. The other way is a wet fit, and that's what we're going to be doing today. There's a couple reasons we do that. One reason we do it is after we pick out our form, we can refreeze the bird, work on the legs, work on the head, work on the tail, and work on the form prep. And when that's all completed and ready, then we can pull our bird out of the freezer, dry it, and mount it. If you would size it dry, that's a good way to get an accurate fit, but you'd have to go through the rest of the process right away. All the form prep and the leg prep and the head prep. This way we can have plenty of time to work on it without having to worry about it. There's a number of different forms on the market for turkeys. The form I'm going to recommend for this course is the TK series you can get from Mackenzie. There's a huge variety of forms if you look at them in the different catalogs as far as what people think a turkey form should look like. Probably the biggest variety of any of the forms on the market. Everybody has a different idea what works and what doesn't. The TK series from Mackenzie is a great series. I use it for a lot of my turkey work here. It's very accurate. I am going to make some adjustments on it as we go through the mounting process. Not that you necessarily have to, but if you want to get a certain look, it can be a good way to do it. And we'll be going over that more in depth. But in this particular case, we're just going to be picking out the form. I have two forms set up here, a TK52, a larger form, and then the TK42. Our bird weighed in right around 20-21 pounds. If you look at the recommendations in the catalog for these forms, you'll see it would recommend a 42 for that. Possibly getting near the 52, I believe that the recommendations they say for that are like 22 plus pounds. I don't like to go by the weight, and I don't like to go by the recommendations in the catalog. It's just a general guide. I've seen some turkeys that weigh in at 18 pounds and fit loose on a 52, depending on how much they're strutting. And I've seen some birds that are weighing in at 22, 23 and barely fit on a 42 if they haven't been strutting much or if they're malnourished. So you have to go by the fit, and that's what we're going to be doing right now. This is our turkey skin all washed and had our cold water rinses. I let it drip out in the sink, and then I just have it laid out on the workbench. The reason I let it drip out, otherwise you have water running everywhere when you're doing this. We have the breast feathers up, or the beard up. We're just going to slowly get the skin opened up and carefully. When it's wet like this, if you pull on these too much, these feathers, you can pull them out. So you want to be a little careful during this process. You want to make sure you have a clean bench underneath it. Avoid having newspapers underneath it unless they're simply white. You wouldn't want black and white or colored newspapers. The moisture from the turkey can soak up some of those colors and might come off on the feathers. So it should be just a clean workbench. We're going to start with the 52. Now this form is probably going to be big, but I want to show you the difference. So we have the breast side of the form up. And we're just going to slide it in. Because we had this thin case skin, we have to slide it in right like this, like it's going into a sleeve. Okay, now from first glance, if you're just looking at this, your first thought is, hey, that's a perfect fit. Look at this. It's very close back here. Everything fits nicely up here. You've got a nice big turkey. This should work great. But in all honesty, this is a little big for this bird. Could we use this form in this bird? Yes, we could. We would have to make some modifications to the form to make that work. This keel area would have to come way down. We'd have to take a lot off the top of the bird. And you might even have to take a little bit off the shoulders. Why is that? Because the wings are not wired in the form. That's going to eat up some skin. The legs are not on the form. That's going to eat up more skin. The crop has not been rebuilt, and we haven't rebuilt all of our expansion. That's going to take up even more room. And we have to dry the bird. So when all that's done and all that extra skin has been pulled up to compensate for all of those areas, you're going to have a very tight fit, which is going to make the rest of the turkey too difficult. What I mean by that is when you're trying to put our tubing in to do injections and taxi the skin around, you're not going to have any movement of your skin. So the mount isn't going to look as good as it could. It could work, but it wouldn't look as good as it could. Another test we can do while it's on the form is we run our hand up to the breast feather. We make a fist. If the fist fits in there, you could have a fit. Now my fist will fit in here, but it's a very tight fit. There's not much extra room. The reason I can even get my fist in here and make this work is because this bird was strutting a lot and it had a lot of expansion. We had touched on that when we were skinning it. The expansion that's exhibited in the 52 would work for this turkey, but it's going to be a little tight. So we're going to try the 42 now. I'm going to show you the difference. Okay, we have the 42 in. Put my fist up here, and I got more room now. I can fit a fist up here easily, and I have a little bit more space to move that fist around. So we've got plenty of extra skin now up there, which is going to make life a lot easier. We kind of line the turkey up like it's going to be sewn up. Again, we have quite a bit of overlap here, but that's okay. We have a lot of extra skin that's going to be ate up with those other areas like I just explained. So we don't have to worry about that. I bring the legs up like they're going to be. I bring all that up and taxi that skin up towards the head a little bit more. And I just take a look at everything. Not a lot of extra skin anywhere. So this is the form we're going to want to use. When the bird is wet like this and we have our form in it, it shows you where the damage is. When we had skinned out a bird during the initial evaluation, we had talked about this double bone fracture break, which you can see here on the bird's right side. It also has some feather damage there, and we had touched on it a little bit that some of these breast feathers were broken, and you can see them broken here. They're still attached. We're going to try to keep those intact through the rest of the process. It might not happen. A lot of times it doesn't. They're going to fall out. It's just in this area here. Most likely when we get our bird all fluffed up and dried, you're not even going to see this. Even if these 6 feathers were missing, we could probably hide it. If there is an area here that just isn't looking right, after we have the bird mounted and dried, we can put a few feathers in, and we'll touch on that more later. Also, if you look at the bottom part of the breast feathers here, you'll see it's missing some feathers. You've got a few broken feathers, and you have a few pin feathers coming in. They fall right out. They always will. That's because the bird had lost some feathers here before it was shot, and they were starting to grow back. On our left side, it's almost perfect. There's no missing feathers. There's no broken feathers. The wing is perfect. The scapular group is perfect. The show side of our bird, or the focal point of our bird, is going to be the left side. The right side is still going to look good, but that's the side that could be slightly towards the wall. We might do something with habitat to hide a few of these areas if we don't repair them. Normally on turkeys, you're always going to have a good side and a great side. And you can sell that to your customers saying the left side, in this case, is the best side. We want to put that as a focal point. The right side has a few issues. Most likely your customer's not even going to see these issues. They never do until you point them out to them. As long as there's not a huge area of missing feathers, you don't have to do any meticulous repairs. A few feathers here and there can go a long way adding them in. As we get the bird dried and sewn on the form, this will become very clear, and we'll go into that more in depth. Normally when I'm doing sizing on my forms, my first impression is normally the best choice. So if I put that 52 in here and it seems, boy, it's just a little tight, it's telling me don't use that form. Go with the next form down. Whenever you have to second guess and keep going back and forth thinking, I wonder what I should do, always go with your first impression. That's always worked great for me. When we do get to using the 42, we are going to make some modification by taking off a little bit of this keel. We do not have to remove a lot of it with this particular fit. We have some extra skin here. We can keep most of this. We'll go into that in more detail later. Now that we have our form picked out, we can refreeze this bird skin. It's still moist enough yet. We can just put it in a plastic bag, seal that bag shut, and put it in the freezer. When we dig it back out of the freezer to mount it, we're going to put it through the wash process again. 1 more soap water wash, and then 3 more rinses, and then we'll dry it. We'll touch on that right before we dry. You can refreeze a bird like this a number of times. You want to make sure the skin stays cool. want to have it on a clean workbench. You don't want to be picking up anything from the bench and getting it on the feathers before you refreeze it. But if you would have the bird completely dried, you wouldn't want to freeze it. They can dry out and the feathers can get messed up from being in the freezer. In an emergency, you can take a dried skin and put it in the freezer overnight, but I like to avoid doing that.